Ambassador Zethkar stood before the massive viewing window of the Galactic Council station. His 6 arms moved in slow patterns as he read the message that had just arrived from Earth. The translation device in his throat clicked softly as he spoke the words aloud. "We withdraw from galactic affairs. Do not follow us." That was it. 12 words that would change everything. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a simple statement that made his scales turn cold. The message had come through. Normal diplomatic channels just like any other communication. But this was not normal at all. Humans did not do simple things. They argued and debated and asked endless questions. They wanted to know the why behind everything. Yet here was a message that said nothing and everything at the same time. Zethkar had worked with humans for 30 years. He had watched them spread across the galaxy like wildfire. When other species took centuries to establish a single colony, humans built 10 in a decade. When others followed ancient traditions, humans asked why things had to stay the same. They were loud and messy and unpredictable. They made many species uncomfortable. The Zephyrians called humans the Rushers because they never seemed to slow down. The Crystalline Collective referred to them as Chaos Bringers because they changed everything they touched. Even the patient Altarians, Zethkar's own people, found humans exhausting to deal with. But they were also brilliant. Human scientists had solved problems that had puzzled the galaxy for thousands of years. Human engineers built things that should not have been possible. Human doctors had cured diseases that had killed millions. They took what existed and made it better, faster, stronger. Now they were gone. Zethkar called an emergency meeting of the Council. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber. The air was filled with different breathing gases, and translation devices hummed constantly as dozens of languages mixed together. "The humans have sent their final message," Zethkar announced. He played the recording for everyone to hear. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft sounds of various species breathing. Councillor Vextai of the Zephyrians was the first to speak. Her voice came out as a series of musical tones that the translators turned into words. "This is good news. The humans were becoming too powerful. They questioned everything. They changed too much too fast." Several other councillors agreed. The humans had made many species nervous with their rapid growth and strange ideas. They had colonies in 3 different galaxy arms now. Their ships were faster than anyone else's. Their weapons were more advanced. Some people worried about what would happen if humans ever decided they did not need the Council anymore. But Councillor Morgath of the Stonewalkers disagreed. His rocky form shifted as he spoke in deep, rumbling tones. "The humans were useful. They solved problems. They protected trade routes. They helped us fight the Shadow Raiders last year." This was true. The Shadow Raiders had been attacking merchant ships for months. The Council's forces could not catch them because their ships were too fast. But human ships were faster. Human weapons had better range. Human pilots thought in ways that confused the raiders. The attacks stopped after humans joined the hunt. "We can handle problems without them," Vextai replied. "We did fine before they came. We will do fine after they leave." Zethkar was not so sure. In the weeks that followed, human colonies across the galaxy began shutting down. No dramatic evacuations or rushed departures. One day the lights were on and people were working. The next day the colonies were empty. Ships that went to investigate found buildings intact but completely abandoned. Food was still fresh in storage areas. Personal belongings were left behind. It was as if everyone had simply vanished. Human ships disappeared from space lanes. Human merchants stopped coming to trade stations. Human scientists left their research projects unfinished. Within 3 months, it was like humans had never existed at all, except for the warning beacons. These appeared around the edges of what used to be human space. Small automated devices that sent the same message to any ship that came near. danger, do not enter, final warning. They were written in every major galactic language and broadcast on all standard frequencies. Some brave or foolish captains ignored the warnings. Their ships were never seen again. No wreckage was found. No distress signals were received. They simply flew into former human territory and vanished completely. The Council declared human space off-limits. Maps were updated to show the area as restricted zone, no entry. Trade routes were adjusted to go around it. Slowly, people stopped talking about the missing humans. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. New species joined the Council. Young people grew up never having met a human. The restricted zone became just another part of space that ships avoided, like areas with dangerous radiation or unstable stars. Stories about humans became legends. Their cities were said to be made of pure energy. Their ships could travel faster than light without using jump gates. Their weapons could destroy entire star systems. Each telling made the stories bigger and more impossible. Most people stopped believing humans had ever been real. They became like the first builders or the star singers, mythical beings that people told stories about but nobody had actually seen. But Zethkar remembered. Even as he grew old and his scales turned gray, he remembered working with humans. He remembered their endless questions and their strange laughter. He remembered how they looked at problems and saw solutions instead of reasons why things could not be done. Sometimes he would stand at the same viewing window where he had read their final message. He would look out at the stars and wonder what had happened to them. Had they found something better than galactic civilization? Had they discovered dangers that made them hide? Were they still out there somewhere, watching and waiting? The warning beacons still functioned after 500 years, still broadcasting their simple message to stay away, still marking the boundaries of a territory that no one understood anymore. Zethkar died in his sleep at the age of 612. His final words were about the humans and whether they would ever come back. His young assistant thought he was having fever dreams about ancient myths. The galaxy moved on without humans. Trade continued. New colonies were built. Wars were fought and ended. The Council grew larger as more species joined. Technology advanced slowly and carefully, following ancient traditions and tested methods. Everything was stable. Everything was safe. Everything was predictable. Nobody noticed the sensors at the edge of the galaxy detecting strange signals from beyond the rim. Nobody paid attention to the automated systems that recorded ships unlike anything in the galactic databases. Nobody saw the reports about space being bent and twisted in ways that should not have been possible. The galaxy was content with its slow, steady progress. The chaotic humans were gone and would never return. This was what everyone told themselves as they went about their quiet, orderly lives. They were wrong about humans never returning. They were also wrong about quiet and orderly being enough to survive what was coming. Admiral Corvash had never seen destruction on this scale before. The holographic display in his command center showed what was left of the Meridian colony. Where 3 million beings had lived and worked just days ago, there was now only twisted metal and dead space. "Show me the sensor readings again," he ordered his tactical officer. Lieutenant Yarash touched her console with trembling claws. The display changed to show energy patterns recorded during the attack. "They came from nowhere, Admiral. Our long-range sensors detected nothing until they were already in the system." The attackers called themselves the Devourers. They had appeared at the galaxy's edge 6 months ago, sweeping through the outer colonies like a plague. Their ships were unlike anything in the Council's databases. Dark metal hulls that seemed to absorb light. Weapons that tore apart matter at the atomic level. Machines that consumed everything they touched and used it to build more ships. Corvash studied the tactical data with growing horror. The Devourers moved with perfect coordination. Hundreds of ships acting as one mind. They did not take prisoners or negotiate. They simply consumed everything useful and moved on to the next target. "Sir," Incoming message from the Council, his communications officer announced. The image of Counselor Thexvar appeared on the main screen. The Altarian's scales had turned a sickly yellow color that meant fear. Admiral, the situation has become critical. The Devourers have broken through our defensive lines at the Nexus Point. They are moving toward the core worlds. Corvash felt his heart skip a beat. The core worlds were home to 50 billion people. If they fell, galactic civilization would collapse. What are my orders, Counselor? The Emergency War Council has authorized Operation Deep Strike. You will take the Third Fleet into the restricted zone. For a moment, Corvash could not speak. The restricted zone was what people called the Old Human Territory. For 500 years, no ship had entered that area and returned. Counselor, are you certain? The risks are acceptable compared to extinction, Thexvar interrupted. We need weapons, technology, anything that might help us fight these. Machines. The humans were the most advanced species in the galaxy before they vanished. If their abandoned worlds contain anything useful, we must find it. The transmission ended, leaving Corvash alone with his thoughts. He had grown up hearing stories about the humans, myths and legends about beings who could work miracles with technology. Most people his age did not believe humans had ever been real, but the Admiral had seen the old records. He had read reports from 5 centuries ago describing human colonies and human ships. Whatever they had been, they were real once, and now the Council was desperate enough to risk everything on the hope that something remained in their abandoned territory. 3 days later, the Third Fleet assembled at the edge of the restricted zone. 12 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers, and 48 escort ships. It was one of the largest fleets ever put together by the Council. They approached the boundary where the ancient warning beacons still pulsed their eternal message. Danger, do not enter, final warning. All ships report ready, Admiral, his fleet commander announced. Corvash took a deep breath. Begin the crossing. All ships maintain formation and maximum alert status. The fleet moved forward. As they passed the beacon line, something strange happened. The warning signals simply stopped. No dramatic shutdown or explosion. The beacons just went quiet, as if someone had flipped a switch. Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead, the sensor operator called out. Multiple contacts, very large. The main display lit up with contact markers, dozens of them, then hundreds. Ships that had been invisible moments before were suddenly appearing on sensors as if they had just decided to stop hiding. Size estimate. On those contacts, Corvash ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Admiral. The sensor operator's voice was barely a whisper. The largest ones are showing as 40 kilometers long. The smaller ones are still bigger than our heavy cruisers. The fleet's communication channels erupted with excited chatter from ship captains. Corvash cut through the noise with a sharp command. Communication silence, battle stations! But as the seconds passed, it became clear that the unknown ships were not attacking. They were just waiting, hanging in space in perfect formations that surrounded the Council fleet completely. Then, a communication signal arrived. It was broadcasting on frequencies that had not been used for 500 years. Frequencies that only appeared in historical records about human transmissions. Unknown fleet. You have entered restricted space without authorization. Identify yourselves and state your purpose, or you will be removed. The voice was speaking standard galactic common, but there was something different about it. The rhythm was wrong. The pronunciation was too perfect. It sounded like someone who had learned the language but had never really lived with it. Corvash's communication officer looked at him with wide eyes. Admiral, what do I respond? For a moment, Corvash considered trying to bluff or negotiate. But looking at the sensor readings showing hundreds of massive ships surrounding his fleet, he decided on honesty. This is Admiral Corvash of the Centaurian Defense Force, representing the Galactic Council. We are facing an invasion by hostile machines called the Devourers. Our civilization is threatened with extinction. We came here hoping to find abandoned technology that might help us defend ourselves." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, and this time there was something almost like amusement in its tone. "The Devourers. Yes, we have been tracking their progress. They are quite efficient at destruction. Tell us, Admiral, why should we care what happens to the Council? Your people told our ancestors to leave and never return. We obeyed those wishes." Corvash felt ice forming in his stomach. "Your ancestors? Are you saying you are human? We are what humans became during our centuries of isolation. We are what your people forced us to become when you made it clear we were not welcome in galactic society." One of the massive ships moved closer to Corvash's flagship. As it approached, details became visible on the sensors. The hull was not made of any known material. It seemed to shift and flow like liquid while remaining solid. Energy patterns moved across its surface in ways that should not have been possible. "We watched your species fight the Shadow Raiders," the voice continued. "We observed the crystalline wars. We monitored the plague of worlds. Each time your people survived through luck or by avoiding the worst consequences of your choices. But the Devourers are different. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything in their path until nothing remains." "Then you understand why we need help," Corvash said. "Please, if you are truly human descendants, then you must remember that we once worked together. We were allies." Another pause. Then a different voice spoke. This one sounded more familiar, more like the human voices from old recordings. "Admiral, this is Captain Sarah Chen Okafor. I speak for the collective consciousness that humanity has become. Your timing is interesting. We have been debating whether to intervene in this crisis. Some of us believe the galaxy must learn to solve its own problems. Others think that allowing the Devourers to succeed would be wasteful." The ship moved, even closer. Through his viewport, Corvash could see figures moving on its hull without protective suits. They walked through space as easily as through air, their forms slightly blurred as if they were not entirely present in normal reality. "We will help you, Admiral. But first, you must understand what you are asking for. We are no longer the humans who left galactic society 5 centuries ago. We have become something else, something that your people might find disturbing. Are you prepared to accept aid from beings who have transcended the limitations that still bind your species?" Corvash thought about the Devourer fleets moving toward the core worlds. He thought about 50 billion people who would die if nothing was done. He thought about the end of everything his civilization had built over thousands of years. "Captain Chen Okafor, we accept whatever help you are willing to provide." "Very well. Follow us, Admiral. You are about to see what 500 years of unrestricted human development has accomplished. Try not to be too frightened by what we have become." Admiral Corvash had been in space for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like the structure that now filled his main viewer. It was impossible to judge its true size because parts of it seemed to exist in different dimensions at the same time. Sections appeared solid one moment and transparent the next. Energy flowed through channels that bent back on themselves in ways that hurt to look at. "Admiral," his science officer whispered, "I'm reading mass estimates that keep changing. Sometimes it shows as larger than a moon. Sometimes it barely registers at all. Is it a ship or a station?" Corvash asked. "I don't think our language has words for what it is." A transport pod had been sent to collect the Admiral and his senior staff. As they flew toward the impossible structure, Corvash noticed that the pod moved through space without any visible engines. When he asked their pilot about this, the being smiled in a way that was almost human but not quite right. "We don't push against space anymore," the pilot explained. We ask it politely to move us where we want to go. The pilot looked human at first glance, but details were wrong. Too tall. Eyes that reflected light strangely. Movements that were too smooth and precise. When Corvash looked carefully, he could see through the pilot's skin to something that glowed softly underneath. They docked at a bay that formed itself around their pod as they approached. The walls flowed like water, but felt solid when touched. Corvash and his team were escorted through corridors that seemed to stretch longer than the structure could contain. Captain Sarah Chen Okafor was waiting for them in what she called a meeting room. It was a space filled with floating platforms and walls that displayed information in languages Corvash had never seen. Chen Okafor herself was clearly human in origin, but changed in fundamental ways. She was tall and graceful with dark skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Her hair moved as if underwater even though there was no wind. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once instead of just from her mouth. "Welcome, Admiral Corvash. I apologize for any discomfort. We sometimes forget how strange we must appear to others. We have been isolated for a very long time. Captain, what happened to your people? How did you become this?" Chen Okafor gestured, and the walls around them came alive with images. Scenes of human colonies and ships from centuries past. Then the Exodus, as millions of humans gathered their belongings and left galactic space behind. When we received the Council's message that we were no longer welcome in galactic affairs, we had a choice to make. We could fight for our right to remain, or we could accept exile and use it as an opportunity. The images showed humans traveling to distant star systems beyond the galaxy's edge, empty worlds where they could work without interference or judgment. We chose opportunity. For the first time in our history, we were free to pursue any line of research or development without worrying about political consequences. We could experiment with technologies that other species considered too dangerous. We could push the boundaries of what was thought possible. New images appeared. Humans working with machines that thought and felt. Laboratories where matter was reshaped at the molecular level. Cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions, that had no names. First, we solved the problem of limited lifespan. Death became optional rather than inevitable. Then we enhanced our minds, linking them to artificial intelligences that amplified our creativity and intuition. We learned to manipulate matter and energy directly through conscious will. Corvash watched in fascination as the images showed. Humans who could walk through walls, exist in multiple places at once, and reshape reality with thought alone. But the greatest breakthrough was collective consciousness. We learned to link our minds together while maintaining individual identity. 1,000,000 humans can think as one while still being themselves. We can share knowledge instantly across vast distances. We can solve problems that would take individuals centuries to figure out. "How is this possible?" Corvash's science officer asked. "Our understanding of physics says—" "Your understanding of physics is incomplete," Chen Okafor replied gently. "We discovered that consciousness itself is a fundamental force, like gravity or electromagnetism. When properly focused, it can alter the basic structure of reality. What you call impossible, we call Tuesday." The images shifted to show something darker. Massive machines moving between star systems, consuming everything in their path. "We have been monitoring the Devourers since they first appeared in this galaxy. They are not native to this reality. They come from a universe where matter and energy work differently. In their realm, consumption and destruction are the only ways to exist." "You knew about them?" Corvash felt a chill. "Why didn't you warn us?" "We tried. 500 years ago, when we first detected signs of their approach, we sent messages to the Council. We offered to share our defensive technologies. We were told that humanity's warnings were not welcome and that we should focus on our own affairs. Chen Okafor's expression grew sad. So we did. We built defenses around our territory that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We created weapons that could unmake the Devourer's ships at the quantum level. We prepared for a war that we hoped would never come. But it has come, Corvash said, and we are losing badly. Yes, the Devourers have consumed 17% of your colonies. At their current rate of advance, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. Your conventional weapons cannot stop them because they adapt to any attack pattern. Your ships cannot outrun them because they exist partially outside normal space-time. The Admiral felt hope draining away. Then we are doomed. Not necessarily. We can stop them. Our weapons work against Devourer technology because we understand the physics of interdimensional warfare. Our ships can match their speed because we travel by folding space rather than moving through it. Our collective consciousness gives us coordination that their hive mind cannot match. Chen Okafor stood and walked to a wall that became transparent at her approach. Beyond it, space was filled with ships unlike anything in Council databases. They moved in perfect formation, flowing around each other like schools of fish. The question is whether your people can accept help from beings who are no longer recognizably human. We have transcended the limitations of biology and physics that still bind your species. To many, we may seem as alien as the Devourers themselves. Corvash joined her at the wall. In the distance, he could see other structures that defied understanding. Cities that existed in folded space, ships that phased in and out of reality, beings of pure energy dancing among the stars. We are still human in the ways that matter, Chen Okafor continued. We still value life and freedom and the right to choose our own path. We still believe that diversity makes the universe stronger, but we have also become something more. Something that your people forced us to become when they decided we were too dangerous to remain in galactic society. Will you help us despite our ancestors' mistakes? Chen Okafor was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that suggested other minds speaking in unison. We have debated this question for months. Some of us believe that the galaxy must face the consequences of its choices. Others argue that allowing civilization to be destroyed serves no useful purpose. In the end, we have decided to offer our aid. She turned to face Corvash directly. Her eyes held depths that spoke of vast knowledge and terrible power. But understand this, Admiral. If we intervene, we will do so completely. We will not fight a limited war or hold back our capabilities to make others comfortable. The Devourers must be stopped permanently, and that requires methods that your people may find disturbing. What do you mean? We mean that when this war is over, the galaxy will have seen what unrestricted human development can accomplish. Your people will have to decide whether they can accept a universe where such power exists, whether they can live alongside beings who have transcended the limitations that once made humans appear merely dangerous rather than godlike. Corvash thought about the alternative, about entire worlds being consumed by machines, about the death of every civilization in the galaxy. Captain Chen Okafor, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request your assistance in stopping the Devourer invasion. Request accepted, Admiral. Prepare your people for war unlike anything they have ever imagined. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from every member species had gathered to hear Admiral Corvash's report about his contact with the humans. The great chamber buzzed with dozens of languages as translators worked overtime to keep up with heated discussions. Councillor Vextai of the Zephyrians stood at the speaker's podium, her musical voice tight with anger. You want us to accept help from beings who claim they can rewrite reality with their thoughts? This is madness. Corvash had shown them recordings from his visit to the human structure. The council had watched in stunned silence as humans walked through solid walls and manipulated matter with their minds. Now the fear was obvious in every delegate's posture. They are no longer human, declared Counselor Cratham of the Stone. Walkers. They have become something else, something that could destroy us as easily as they claim they can save us. The Devourers will destroy us anyway, Admiral Corvash replied. At least the humans offer hope. Do they? Vextai's tone grew sharper. How do we know they will stop with the Devourers? How do we know they won't decide that the galaxy needs to be ruled by beings with their capabilities? Counselor Thexavar of the Altarians called for order. The debate is academic. Long-range sensors show 3 Devourer fleets moving toward the core worlds. They will arrive within days. We must decide now whether to accept human assistance or face extinction. The argument continued for hours. Some species wanted to evacuate the core worlds rather than trust the humans. Others insisted that any help was better than certain death. The chamber became so chaotic that the translation systems began failing under the load. Then the alarms started. Emergency alert! The station's artificial intelligence spoke in every language simultaneously. Massive Devourer fleet detected entering the Gamma sector. Estimated arrival at Council Central in 6 hours. The chamber fell silent. Through the great windows, they could see distant flashes of light as the outer defense platforms tried desperately to slow the enemy advance. But everyone knew those defenses would not hold for long. Counselor Thexvar's scales had turned gray with fear. Admiral Corvash, can you contact the humans? I'll try. Corvash activated his communication device. The reply came almost instantly. This is Captain Chen Okafor. We are aware of the situation, Admiral. Our long-range sensors detected the Devourer movement 3 hours ago. We are already moving to intercept. How long before you can reach us? We are already there. The great windows of the council chamber suddenly filled with impossible sights. Ships that had not been there moments before materialized in the space around the station. They moved without visible engines, flowing through space like living things. Some appeared solid, others seemed to be made of pure energy. A few flickered in and out of existence, as if they could not decide which dimension to occupy. By the ancient stones, whispered Counselor Cratham. How many ships do they have? Our sensors are detecting over 2,000 human vessels, the station AI reported. Mass readings are inconsistent. Some ships appear to have negative mass. Others show as existing in multiple locations simultaneously. On the main display, tactical data showed the approaching Devourer fleet. 500 massive ships moving in perfect formation. Their dark hulls absorbed sensor beams, and their weapons could tear apart matter at the atomic level. They had swept aside every council force that had tried to stop them. But as the human fleet moved to intercept, something extraordinary happened. The human ships did not form traditional battle lines or defensive formations. Instead, they simply disappeared. Where did they go? Vextai demanded. Unknown, the AI replied. All human vessels have vanished from sensors. Then the Devourers began dying. The massive enemy ships started exploding without any visible cause. No weapon signatures, no energy discharges. They simply came apart as if their basic structure had forgotten how to hold together. In minutes, the terrifying Devourer fleet was reduced to clouds of expanding debris. Impossible, breathed the station's military commander. Nothing can destroy Devourer ships that quickly. Captain Chen Okafor's voice came through the communication system again. The immediate threat has been neutralized. However, this was only one of several Devourer fleets in your galaxy. We are moving to engage the others. Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Devourer fleets that had been unstoppable were being wiped out in minutes. Human ships appeared from nowhere, unleashed weapons that defied understanding and vanished again, before anyone could fully comprehend what had happened. At the Kepler Defense Station, sensors recorded human vessels that seemed to fire backwards through time, destroying Devourer ships before the battle officially began. Near the crystalline homeworld, witnesses reported seeing human fighters that existed as pure thought, passing through enemy hulls and causing them to simply cease existing. The most disturbing report came from the Outer Rim, where a human ship had apparently torn a hole in space-time itself to redirect a planet-killing weapon. The Devourer weapon had passed through the hole and emerged on the other side of the galaxy, destroying a Devourer shipyard instead of its intended target. "They're fighting with the laws of physics themselves," Admiral Corvash's science officer reported. Energy readings show local reality being rewritten on a massive scale. They're not just defeating the Devourers, they're unmaking them. Within 12 hours, it was over. Every Devourer ship in the galaxy had been destroyed or driven. Back beyond the galactic rim, the invasion that had threatened to end civilization had been stopped so completely that it was as if it had never happened. But the display of power had terrified even those who had been saved. When human ships casually moved through solid matter, or existed in multiple places at once, it became clear that humanity had become something beyond the understanding of other species. Captain Chen Okafor requested permission to address the council. She appeared in the chamber not as a hologram, but as a physical presence that had somehow passed through the station's hull without using any visible method of entry. "Honored counselors," she began, "the Devourer threat has been eliminated. Their remaining forces have been driven back to their origin point beyond this reality. They will not return." "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Vexatai demanded. "How do we know you won't decide we're a threat that needs to be eliminated?" Chen Okafor's expression was patient but sad. "Because we remember being where you are now. We remember being afraid of forces beyond our control. We remember what it felt like to be small and vulnerable in a dangerous universe. But you're not small anymore," Counselor Cratham pointed out. "You have power that could reshape the galaxy. What's to stop you from using it?" "Choice," Chen Okafor replied simply. "We choose not to rule because we remember the value of freedom. We choose not to dominate because we understand that diversity makes the universe stronger. We choose to help because we know what it feels like to face extinction alone." She gestured, and the air filled with images of human colonies and projects across the galaxy. Not conquests or imposed rule, but research stations and defensive platforms. "We offer you a choice. Continue as you have, following the old ways and the old limitations. We will protect you from external threats, but will not interfere in your internal affairs. Or join us in exploring what species can become when they are not bound by the fear of change." "And if we choose the old ways?" Thexvar asked. "Then you choose the old ways. We will not force evolution on anyone. But we will also not pretend that the universe has not changed. Other threats will come. Other challenges will arise. When they do, you will have to decide whether you want to face them as you are, or as something more." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy had been saved, but at the cost of certainty. The humans had returned more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy could adapt to a universe where such power existed and offered to be shared. "We need time to consider," Thexvar said finally. "Time you have," Chen Okafor replied. "We have waited 500 years. We can wait longer. But remember, the universe does not pause its challenges while you decide whether you are ready to meet them." With that, she faded from view, leaving the council to debate the future of galactic civilization in a universe where gods walked among the stars and offered to teach others how to join them. 6 months after the defeat of the Devourers, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had changed. Captain Sarah Chen Okafor stood before the reformed Galactic Council in a chamber that had been rebuilt to accommodate new realities. Parts of the room existed in folded space to make room for representatives from dimensions that had no names in any conventional language. The council itself had grown. New species had emerged from hiding places where they had waited out the devourer. Crisis. Others had been contacted by human exploration teams working in distant corners of the galaxy. Some were barely recognizable as life forms, existing as patterns of organized energy or crystallized time. Honored representatives, Chen Okafor began, we have come to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The old order, based on slow change and careful traditions, has ended. The question now is what will replace it. Councillor Thexvar, whose scales had regained their healthy blue color, spoke first. Captain, your people have made their position clear. You will not rule us, but you will not pretend that power like yours does not exist. What exactly are you proposing? We propose evolution, Chen Okafor replied. Not forced change, but chosen growth. We offer to share our knowledge with any species willing to embrace the challenges that come with advancement. The holographic display activated, showing images of human research stations and training facilities that had appeared across the galaxy. We have established centers where beings can learn to enhance themselves, not to become human, but to become more than they currently are. Councillor Vexatai of the Zephyrians stood to object. You want us to abandon what makes us who we are, to give up our essential nature for the promise of power. No, Chen Okafor said gently. We want you to expand what makes you who you are. The Zephyrians' musical consciousness could become something that shapes reality through harmony. The Stonewalkers' connection to planetary forces could allow them to guide the formation of solar systems. The Crystalline Collective's data-sharing abilities could create networks of knowledge that span dimensions. New images appeared showing the early results of human-guided enhancement programs. Zephyrians whose songs could heal damaged space-time. Stonewalkers who could feel the thoughts of entire worlds. Crystalline beings whose data networks operated faster than light without any physical infrastructure. These individuals volunteered for our enhancement programs, Chen Okafor explained. They retain everything that made them who they were, but they have gained capabilities that their species never imagined possible. Representative Torgon of the Deep Swimmers raised a tentacled appendage. What about species that choose not to change? What happens to us? Nothing changes for you unless you want it to, Chen Okafor assured him. We will continue to provide protection from external threats. Trade and communication will continue as before. But we will not pretend that stagnation is a valid long-term strategy for survival. Admiral Corvash, now serving as the Council's military advisor, added his perspective. I've seen what the enhanced beings can do. A single Zephyrian with musical reality manipulation can do the work of an entire engineering team. A Stonewalker connected to planetary consciousness can predict geological problems centuries in advance. The possibilities are incredible. The dangers are also incredible, Councillor Cratham pointed out. What happens when enhanced beings decide they know better than their unenhanced cousins? What happens when power corrupts them? Chen Okafor nodded. Valid concerns. That's why enhancement comes with safeguards. Enhanced beings retain connection to their original communities. They are monitored by the collective consciousness for signs of dangerous behavior. And most importantly, enhancement can be reversed if someone decides they want to return to their original state. She gestured, and a new figure appeared in the chamber. It was clearly Zephyrian in origin, but larger and more complex than any natural member of the species. When it spoke, its voice created patterns of light in the air. I am Melody of Stars Dancing, formerly Vextar of the Outer Colonies. I underwent enhancement 3 months ago. I retain all my memories, all my connections to Zephyrian culture, all my love for my birth world. But I can now compose songs that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. I can create harmonies that accelerate the healing of damaged planets. I am still Zephyrian, but I am more than I was. And if you wanted to return to your original form? Kratham asked. The option remains available, Melody of Stars Dancing replied. But why would I choose limitation when I can have growth? Why would I choose silence when I can have symphony? The debate continued for hours. Species representatives questioned every aspect of the human proposal. What were the risks? What were the benefits? How could they be sure this wasn't some elaborate form of conquest? Finally, Councillor Thexvar called for order. Captain Chen Okafor, you're asking us to fundamentally change how our civilization operates, to abandon traditions that have served us for thousands of years. Why should we trust you? Chen Okafor was quiet for a moment before responding. Because you trusted us enough to ask for help when extinction was the alternative. Because we kept our word and defeated the devourers without demanding anything in return. Because we could have imposed our will on the galaxy after demonstrating our power. But instead, we are here asking for your permission to help you grow. She stood and walked to the great windows overlooking the space around the station. Beyond the transparent barriers, ships and structures from dozens of species moved in complex patterns. Some were traditional designs that had remained unchanged for centuries. Others incorporated new human technologies that allowed them to exist, partially outside normal space-time. The universe is vast and full of challenges we haven't even imagined yet. The Devourers were just one thread among many. There are beings of pure entropy working to unravel the fabric of reality itself. There are machine intelligences that consume entire galactic clusters to power their computations. There are entities from outside this universe that see our reality as nothing more than raw material for their projects. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. We can face these challenges as we are, limited by biology and physics and traditional thinking, or we can face them as something more, something capable of matching any threat the universe can present. And what about freedom? Asked a new voice. It belonged to Representative Quill Ash of the Wanderer clans, a species that valued independence, above all else. What about the right to remain as we are? Preserved absolutely, Chen Okafor promised. The new compact we propose has 3 simple principles. First, enhancement is always voluntary. Second, enhanced beings remain connected to and responsible to their original communities. Third, unenhanced species receive full protection and support without any pressure to change. She turned back to address the full council. We are not asking you to become human. We are asking you to become more than you currently are, while remaining true to what makes you unique. We are offering partnership in exploring the full potential of conscious life in this universe. The vote was close. 43 species chose to join the new compact and begin enhancement programs for their volunteers. 31 species chose to remain unenhanced but accepted human protection and support. 17 species withdrew from galactic affairs entirely, preferring isolation to the uncertainties of change. 1 year later, the first generation of enhanced beings was working alongside humans on projects that would have been impossible before. They were building stations that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. They were creating art that could be experienced across dimensional boundaries. They were solving mathematical problems that described the fundamental structure of existence itself. But perhaps most importantly, they were still recognizably themselves. Enhanced Zephyrians still sang. Enhanced Stone Walkers still felt deep connections to planetary forces. Enhanced crystalline beings still shared knowledge freely with their communities. They had become more without becoming less. Admiral Korvash now enhanced himself with improved reflexes and multidimensional awareness, stood on the observation deck of the New Earth facility. The structure existed partially in normal space and partially in folded dimensions that allowed it to be much larger on the inside than the outside. Through the viewing walls, he could see Earth itself. The planet had been transformed into something that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was still recognizably the world that had given birth to humanity, but it had become a beacon visible across the galaxy, a symbol of what was possible when beings chose growth over stagnation. "Impressive, isn't it?" Captain Chen Okafor appeared beside him, her form shifting slightly as she moved between dimensional states. "I never imagined anything like this was possible," Corvash admitted. "My people thought we understood the limits of what life could achieve." "There are no limits," Chen Okafor replied. "Only challenges we haven't learned to overcome yet. And with each generation of enhanced beings, we become better at overcoming them." In the distance, a new ship was leaving Earth's orbital facilities. It was...
The massive alien ship hung in space like a dark cloud over Earth. It was 5 times bigger than the largest human spaceship. Inside the ship, Commander Zarthul looked at the blue planet on his viewing screen. His 4 eyes blinked one after another, and his gray skin wrinkled as he smiled. This would be an easy victory. "Report," he ordered his science officer. Officer Mexnar bowed slightly. "The humans are just as our data suggested, Commander. They are physically weak. Their bones break easily. Their skin tears. They tire quickly. Their lives are very short. Their weapons are primitive compared to ours. And their governments cannot agree on anything." Zarthul made a sound like rocks falling. It was laughter. "And yet they claim to have great heroes and warriors. Pathetic. Prepare the communication channel. I will speak to their leaders." On Earth, in the United Nations Emergency Council room, 50 world leaders sat in tense silence. The alien message had arrived 3 days ago. It was simple: prepare to discuss terms of surrender or be destroyed. After years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, the answer had come in the worst possible way. "The channel is opening," said General Diane Rogers. She stood tall despite the fear everyone felt. "Remember, we need to buy time. Our fleet is still gathering." The large screen at the front of the room flickered, and the alien commander appeared. His 4 eyes looked at them with what seemed like amusement. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Commander Zarthul of the Hegemony. Your planet is now under our protection and control. Resistance is not advised." President Luis Garcia stood up. "We welcome communication with your people, Commander, but Earth is a free world. We do not accept control by outside forces." Zarthul's upper eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Your species has been studied and found wanting. You are weak, divided, and primitive. Your addition to the hegemony is a mercy." Captain Olivia Martinez stepped forward. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer, she had been chosen for her calm mind and quick thinking. "Commander, with respect, you may have misjudged us. Humans have survived and thrived against great odds throughout our history." The alien made that strange, rocky laughing sound again. "Yes, we have reviewed your historical records. Very creative fiction." "They are not fiction," Olivia said firmly. "Humans have endured ice ages, plagues, and disasters. We have climbed the highest mountains with no equipment. We have survived alone at sea for months. Our ancestors crossed entire oceans on wooden boats using only stars to guide them." "Unlikely exaggerations," Zarthul dismissed her with a wave of his 6-fingered hand. "Such stories are common among primitive species. They help you feel less afraid of your obvious weaknesses." Lieutenant William Hayes couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Those aren't just stories. Last year, a 12-year-old girl survived a plane crash and walked through jungle for 10 days to find help. 2 winters ago, a man fell through ice and kept himself alive for 3 days until rescue came. These things happened." The commander's face showed nothing but boredom. "Your emotional outbursts only confirm my assessment. You have 72 of your Earth hours to prepare for our arrival. Your world leaders will meet with me to arrange your surrender. Any military action will result in immediate consequences. End transmission." The screen went dark. The room exploded with voices. Some leaders wanted to fight, others wanted to surrender. No one knew what to do. Behind them all, sitting quietly in the back row, Major Alan Shepard watched and listened. He wasn't supposed to be there. As a Special Forces operative, his presence was classified. But the Joint Chiefs had wanted him in the room. General Rogers noticed his silence. She walked over and sat beside him. "What are you thinking, Alan?" Alan's eyes never left the now empty screen. "He doesn't know us, not really." "Explain." "He's read reports, seen data, but he's never faced a human who refuses to give up." Alan's voice was soft but certain. "Every strength can be a weakness. His confidence will blind him." General Rogers lowered her voice. "The hegemony ships have already destroyed our moon base and the orbital defense platforms. They didn't even slow down. Our remaining ships are outmatched in every way." Alan finally turned to look at her. His eyes were calm, but something burned behind them. "Then we don't fight fair." 3 hours later, in a secure underground facility, Alan stood before the Unified Defense Council. 6 military leaders from different nations sat at a long table. Maps and data about the alien ships filled the screens around the room. "Major Shepard, your service record is impressive," said Admiral Chen, "but this is beyond anything we've faced." Alan nodded. "Yes, sir. But the hegemony has a critical weakness." "Which is?" asked General Mills. "Arrogance." Alan stepped forward and pointed to the image of the alien flagship. "They believe they know everything about us. They've studied our physical limitations but missed our greatest strength." "Which is?" repeated General Mills. "Adaptation. Innovation. Humans don't follow the expected path when cornered." Alan looked each council member in the eye. "I believe a small team could infiltrate their flagship, 1 person even." The room went quiet. "That's suicide," said Air Marshal Patel finally. "Probably," Alan agreed. "But right now, they're not expecting any resistance. They think we're broken already. That gives us one chance for someone to get aboard, gather intelligence on their weaknesses, and possibly disrupt their command structure." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "And you're volunteering?" "Yes, sir." The council members looked at each other. They had no better options. "How would you even get aboard their ship?" asked General Rogers. A slight smile touched Alan's lips. 2 months ago, we recovered a damaged hegemony scout ship after a brief encounter near Jupiter. Dr. Eleanor Wright has been studying it. I believe it can be made operational," the council whispered among themselves. Finally, Admiral Chen spoke. "This is a desperate plan." "Yes, sir. Those are the only kind that work when the odds are impossible." General Rogers stood up. "I've seen Major Shepard's full record. Most of it is classified beyond this room. He has survived situations that should have been impossible. If anyone can do this, he can." The vote was quick. The mission was approved. As the council members filed out, General Rogers touched Alan's arm. "The hegemony commander thinks all our stories of human courage are lies. Maybe this mission will change his mind." Alan shook his head. "I'm not trying to be a legend, ma'am. Just trying to give humanity a fighting chance." "That's how all legends start, Major." She handed him a small data device. "Complete access to everything we know about their technology. Dr. Wright is waiting. For you in Lab 7. Alan took the device and nodded once. As he walked toward the lab, his mind was already planning, adapting, finding edges and angles others might miss. The alien commander had studied humans as a species, but he had never met a human like Alan Shepard, and that might just save Earth. The underground lab hummed with activity. Dr. Eleanor Wright didn't look up from her work when Alan entered. Her hands moved quickly over the alien technology spread across her workbench. Only when he cleared his throat did she notice him. "Major Shepard," she said, pushing her glasses up. "They approved your crazy plan, then?" "They did," Alan replied. "How's our ride coming along?" Eleanor gestured to the small craft in the center of the lab. It looked like a cross between a fighter jet and a manta ray. Its dark metal surface seemed to swallow light. "The scout ship is mostly repaired. It will fly." She frowned. "But there's a problem." The hegemony uses biosignature locks. The ship knows its pilot isn't on board. Alan walked around the alien craft studying it. Can we trick it? Eleanor smiled for the first time. Maybe. I've been working on something. She picked up what looked like a thin silver wristband. This contains genetic material from the dead pilot. It might fool the ship's scanners long enough for you to take control. As Eleanor showed Alan how to use the alien systems, a young officer entered with a data tablet. Major Shepard, I have your file for review before the mission. Alan took the tablet and scrolled through it. Most pages were heavily redacted with thick black lines covering the text. The officer looked confused. I don't understand why they sent this. You can't even read most of it. Alan handed it back. I lived it. I don't need to read it. After the officer left, Eleanor looked at Alan with new interest. Just who are you, Major? Alan continued checking the scout ship's systems. Just a soldier who's good at staying alive. No, Eleanor said. I checked your basic record. 15 years in special reconnaissance. 3 times listed as the sole survivor of operations. Multiple commendations that don't state what they're for. You're not just anything. Alan was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Wright, we have 12 hours before I leave. Let's focus on what matters. As they worked through the night, Eleanor's respect for Alan grew. He learned the alien technology faster than anyone she had ever seen. He didn't just memorize what she taught him. He understood it, finding connections she had missed. How did you know that control sequence? She asked after he correctly activated a system she hadn't shown him. It follows the same pattern as their weapons system, he said simply. They think logically, but it's always the same logic. That's their weakness. By morning, the scout ship was ready. Alan changed into a special suit Eleanor had designed. It contained materials that might help mask his human life signs from alien sensors. General Rogers arrived as he was preparing to leave. She carried a small case. Last-minute addition, she said, opening it to reveal a small device. Dr. Wright's team just finished it. It can create a targeted electromagnetic pulse that might disrupt their systems. Very short range, though. Alan took the device and secured it in a hidden pocket. Thank you. The hegemony ships have moved closer, General Rogers said. They destroyed 3 of our defensive satellites this morning, just to show they could. Her face was grim. We're running out of time. I'll need a distraction to launch without being noticed, Alan said. General Rogers nodded. There's a planned diplomatic meeting happening in 2 hours. The aliens agreed to let a small human delegation visit their secondary command ship. Everyone will be focused on that. Good luck, Major, Eleanor said, handing him a small communicator. This is tuned to a frequency the hegemony doesn't monitor. If you find anything useful, you can let us know. As Alan prepared to board the scout ship, General Rogers placed a hand on his shoulder. Major, may I ask you something personal? Alan nodded. Your file mentions you survived 17 days alone in the mountains after an accident. You were just a teenager. How? Alan's eyes grew distant. It was winter. The car went off the road. My parents died on impact. He paused. I knew no one was coming, so I walked. When I couldn't walk, I crawled. What kept you going? A shadow of an old pain crossed his face. I made a promise to my mother when I was a child, that I would always come home. He looked at the general. I keep my promises. 2 hours later, as the diplomatic shuttle approached the secondary hegemony ship, Alan powered up the scout ship. The biosignature band on his wrist glowed softly. The alien craft hummed to life, accepting him as its pilot. Scoutcraft X-117, to command, Alan said into the communication system, using the alien language Eleanor had taught him. His voice was altered by the ship's systems to sound like a hegemony officer. Requesting permission for sensor sweep of outlying moon quadrants. There was a pause. Alan held his breath. Permission granted, X-117, came the reply. Keep channel open for updates. The small ship lifted smoothly from the hidden underground hangar. Alan guided it up through a mountain tunnel that opened to the sky. Once in the air, He activated the stealth systems Eleanor had explained. The massive hegemony flagship grew larger on his view screen. It was shaped like an arrowhead and was as big as a small city. Lights flickered across its surface like stars. Smaller ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Alan's hands were steady on the controls as he approached. He had been in impossible situations before. When he was trapped behind enemy lines during the resource wars, everyone had thought he was dead. For 6 months, he had survived, gathered intelligence, and finally made it back to friendly territory, with critical information that helped end the conflict. This was just another mission, another problem to solve. The scout ship sensors showed him the flagship's docking bays. He chose one on the far side, away from the diplomatic activity. Using the codes in the scout ship's memory, he transmitted clearance signals and approached, slowly. X-117, your flight path is irregular, a voice suddenly said over the communication system. Explain deviation. Alan's mind raced. Sensor malfunction, he replied calmly, requesting emergency docking for repairs. Another pause. Longer this time. Proceed to Maintenance Bay 6, the voice finally said. Alan guided the ship toward the indicated bay. As the massive doors opened to receive him, he checked his weapons one last time. The small pulse device from General Rogers. A knife made of a non-metallic material that wouldn't set off sensors. His own knowledge and training. It would have to be enough. The scout ship settled onto the docking platform. Through the view screen, Alan could see hegemony crew members approaching. They walked with the confidence of those who had never known defeat. Alan took a deep breath and activated the ship's exit sequence. The moment had come. One human against an empire that thought humanity was weak. He would prove them wrong or die trying. As the door opened, he thought again of his 17 days in the mountains. The cold, the hunger, the fear. But mostly, he remembered the determination that had kept him moving forward, one painful step at a time. That same determination filled him now as he stepped out to face the aliens, his face a mask of calm confidence. The hidden hero of Earth was now inside the enemy's fortress. The real mission had begun. Alan stepped out of the scout ship with the confidence of someone who belonged there. 2 hegemony technicians approached. They were taller than humans, with gray skin and 4 eyes that blinked in sequence. Alan kept his face hidden in the shadow of his helmet. Maintenance report, one technician demanded. Alan touched his wrist device and spoke in their language. Navigation sensors failing. Required immediate docking. The technician looked at a data pad. You are not scheduled for return. Emergencies are never scheduled, Alan replied calmly. The technician's upper eyes narrowed, but he nodded. Proceed to diagnostic chamber for standard scan. Alan knew a scan would reveal he was human. He needed a distraction. As they walked, he secretly pressed a small button on his belt. Behind them, a small explosion rocked the scout ship. Nothing damaging, just a controlled fuel line rupture Eleanor had prepared. Hull breach, the second technician shouted. Both aliens ran back toward the smoking ship. Alan slipped away quickly. He moved through the corridors, keeping his head down. Eleanor had studied the limited layout information they had on hegemony ships. The most important areas would be in the center. He headed inward. The flagship was enormous. Thousands of hegemony crew members moved through its hallways. Alan blended in by walking purposefully, as if on an important mission. When someone looked his way, he changed his path or ducked into side passages. He found a maintenance tunnel that ran between major sections of the ship. It was tight and dark, perfect for moving unseen. The tunnel led him to a large open area, filled with glowing computer screens and busy technicians. From their movements and the security, Alan could tell this was an important control center. He waited in the shadows, watching. After an hour, he understood the pattern of their work. There was a 5-minute gap when the main console was unattended during shift changes. That would be his chance. When the moment came, Alan moved quickly. He slipped to the main console and plugged in a small device Eleanor had given him. It copied data at high speed. In less than a minute, he had downloaded maps of the entire ship. Communication logs and battle plans. What he saw made his blood run cold. The hegemony wasn't just planning to conquer Earth. They wanted to use it as a base to attack other systems. Earth was just the first step in a massive invasion plan. Alan was about to leave when something else caught his eye. Power system diagrams. He downloaded those too. Eleanor had said understanding their technology might reveal weaknesses. A door opened. Alan ducked beneath the console just as a high-ranking officer entered. The alien's uniform had more markings than any Alan had seen. He was speaking to someone through a communication device. "Yes, Commander Zarthul. The human delegation is still being given the tour of our secondary vessel. They suspect nothing." Alan froze at the mention of the commander. "Their primitive minds are easily impressed by our technology," the officer continued. "They truly believe we are considering peaceful options." The officer laughed that strange rocky sound. "The attack preparations are proceeding as planned. Earth's defenses will fall within hours of your command." When the officer left, Alan quickly moved toward the exit. He had what he came for. Now, he needed to get the information back to Earth. But as he reached the corridor, alarms began to sound. "Intruder alert. Security breach in Central Command. All personnel on high alert." Had they discovered him? Alan moved faster, keeping to the maintenance tunnels. He needed to find a communication station to transmit the data to Earth. The small communicator Eleanor had given him didn't have the power to send so much information across such a distance. He found a minor communication hub with only one technician. Alan slipped behind the alien and used a pressure point technique that worked on many species. The technician slumped unconscious. Alan dragged him out of sight and took his place at the controls. The alien technology was complex, but Alan had studied similar systems. He began connecting his data device to send the information to Earth. The system required authorization codes. Alan used the unconscious technician's ID and hoped it would be enough. The screen flashed green. Transmission beginning. Alan watched as the ship plans and battle strategies began uploading to a secure Earth receiver. Then the screen flashed red. Transmission blocked. "Did you really think it would be that easy, human?" Alan turned slowly. Commander Zarthul himself stood in the doorway. He was larger than the other aliens, his gray skin darker and marked with scars. All four of his eyes were fixed on Alan. "I must admit I am impressed you made it this far," the commander said. "How did one of you primitive creatures manage to infiltrate my flagship?" Alan stood straight. No point hiding now. He removed his helmet. "We humans are full of surprises." Zarthul studied him. "Indeed. Our security systems detected an anomaly, but I didn't believe a human could possibly be aboard. I was wrong." He sounded almost pleased. "That rarely happens." Alan glanced at the communication console. The data transfer had stopped at 67%. Not everything, but enough had gotten through. Earth would know the hegemony's plans now. "Your species continues to behave illogically," Zarthul said, stepping closer. "Why throw away your life on a mission that cannot succeed? You must have known you would be caught." "Sometimes the mission is worth the risk," Alan said. "And what mission is that? Spying? Sabotage?" The commander's upper eyes narrowed. "Did you really think one human could make a difference against the might of the hegemony?" Alan smiled slightly. "One person can always make a difference. That's something you don't understand about humans. We don't calculate odds the way you do. When something matters enough, we try even when success seems impossible." Zarthul made a dismissive gesture. "Irrational sentiment. It changes nothing. Your data transmission was incomplete. Whatever you learned will not save your planet." "Maybe not," Alan admitted. "But now we know what we're facing. And humans fight hardest when our backs are against the wall." The commander studied Alan with new curiosity. "You are not what I expected, human. You show unusual courage for such a fragile creature." "You've studied our physical limitations," Alan said, "but you've missed what makes us strong." "Which is?" "Our ability to adapt, to overcome, to find a way forward even when there seems to be none." Alan's voice was calm but intense. Your reports tell you we're weak. Your data shows our short lives and fragile bodies. But there's no way to measure determination, Commander. No data point for hope or courage. 4 armed guards entered behind Zarthul. The commander gestured toward Alan. Take him to the high-security detention level. I wish to interrogate this human properly. He looked at Alan with his 4 eyes. I want to understand how he got aboard my ship before I destroy his world. As the guards surrounded him, Alan remained calm. He had accomplished part of his mission. The information he sent would give Earth a fighting chance, and he wasn't done yet. As long as he was alive, he could still find a way to help. The guards marched him out of the communications center. Through the massive windows in the corridor, Alan could see Earth shining blue and white in the distance. His home, worth any risk to protect, and he had one more card to play. The small EMP device General Rogers had given him was still hidden in his boot. He hadn't yet found the right target, but he would. Somehow he would. The detention cell was small and bare, 3 walls and a force field that shimmered with blue energy. Alan sat quietly on the metal bench, eyes closed. To the guard watching him, he appeared defeated. In truth, he was memorizing the sounds around him, the hum of the engines, the pattern of the guard rotations, the slight fluctuation in the force field every 87 seconds. 4 hours had passed since his capture. The small EMP device remained hidden in his boot. The guards had searched him but missed it, not recognizing Earth technology for what it was. The force field rippled and vanished. Commander Zarthul entered, flanked by 2 guards. He dismissed them with a gesture. They looked uncertain but obeyed, moving just out of earshot down the corridor. I reviewed the data you attempted to send to Earth, Zarthul said. You managed to transmit our ship schematics and part of our battle plans. Alan said nothing. It will not help them, the commander continued. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot match our speed. He tilted his head. But I am curious. How did one human infiltrate my flagship? Our security systems are the most advanced in 12 star systems. Alan looked up at him. You rely too much on your technology. You trust it completely. Because it is perfect. Alan almost smiled. Nothing is perfect. Everything has a flaw if you look hard enough. The commander's 4 eyes studied him. And what flaw did you find in our perfect system? You assumed humans were too primitive to understand it, so you never considered we might use it against you. Zarthul made a sound that might have been respect. You are different from the others I've met. The diplomats were fearful. The military officials were angry but helpless. He paced the small cell. You are neither afraid nor angry. Why? Both waste energy, Alan said simply. What is your name, human? Major Alan Shepard. The commander nodded slowly. Major Shepard, I offer you a choice. Tell me how you infiltrated my ship, what weaknesses you have discovered, and I will spare your life when we conquer Earth. Alan met the alien's gaze. And if I refuse? Then I will extract the information anyway, and you will not survive to see your world fall. Alan stood up slowly. The commander was much taller, broader. Physically, there was no contest between them. There's something you should know about humans, Commander. What is that? We don't respond well to threats. What happened next was too fast for the guards to follow. Alan lunged forward, not at the commander but past him. His hand slammed against the control panel by the cell door. The ship's alarm system blared to life. Red lights flashed throughout the detention level. Containment breach, Sector 7, the automated system announced. All around them, force fields dropped as the emergency protocol activated, releasing prisoners to evacuation points in case of ship damage. Chaos erupted in the detention block. Prisoners of various species ran in all directions. Guards shouted, trying to restore order. Zarthul roared in anger, grabbing for Alan, but the human was already moving with the flow of escaping prisoners. The commander barked orders into his communication device. Override the alarm, it's a trick. Find the human. Alan used the confusion to make his way deeper into the ship. The data he had seen earlier had shown him something critical, the flagship's main power core. If he could reach it, the EMP device might disable the ship long enough for Earth to prepare better defenses. He found a maintenance shaft and climbed inside. The ship's diagrams were clear in his mind as he navigated the narrow passages. Below him, he could hear security teams searching. His trick wouldn't buy him much time. The shaft led him to a massive chamber filled with pulsing blue energy, the power core. It was beautiful in a strange way, like a captured star. Around it, technicians monitored control panels. Security was heavy here. 6 armed guards. Alan watched from the shadows, calculating. He couldn't fight them all. He needed another way. His eyes fell on a set of pipes running along the ceiling. They carried coolant to prevent the core from overheating. If he could disrupt that system, it would create an emergency that might clear the room. Using pipes and support, beams for handholds, Alan climbed silently across the ceiling of the chamber. None of the aliens looked up. He reached a junction box that controlled the coolant flow and carefully removed its cover. The wiring inside was complex, but Alan had studied enough hegemony technology to understand the basics. He crossed 2 circuits, then 3 more. Warning lights flashed on the control panels below. Coolant pressure dropping, a technician shouted. Core temperature rising. Evacuate to safe distance, ordered the security chief. Emergency team to power core. The room emptied quickly. Alan dropped down from the ceiling and moved to the main control console. The power core pulsed faster now, its blue glow intensifying as it heated up. He had minutes at most before the emergency team arrived. He studied the system, looking for the right place to use the EMP device. The core itself was too well shielded. But there, a secondary control node that regulated power distribution throughout the ship. If he could disable that, it would create a cascade failure. Alan planted the EMP device on the node and set the timer for 30 seconds. He turned to leave, but a familiar voice stopped him. Impressive, Major Shepard. Commander Zarthul stood in the doorway, holding a weapon aimed at Alan's chest. He was alone. You created a perfect distraction. You navigated my ship as if born to it. You even found the one weakness in our power system. The commander's voice held genuine admiration. In all my years commanding this fleet, I have never encountered an enemy like you. Alan glanced at the EMP device. 20 seconds. Step away from the control node, Zarthul ordered. Your ship is overheating, Alan said. If you don't let the technicians back in soon, you'll have bigger problems than one human. A problem we can solve after I deal with you. The commander stepped closer. Your species should have surrendered. Why fight when you cannot win? 10 seconds. Alan smiled slightly. That's where you're wrong. Humans don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible. 5 seconds. Zarthul sensed something was wrong. He lunged forward just as Alan dove to the side. The EMP device activated with a high-pitched whine. A pulse of energy shot outward, invisible but powerful. The ship's lights went dark, the pulsing core dimmed but stabilized. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing the room in dim red light. In that moment of darkness, Alan and Zarthul collided. The alien commander was stronger, but Alan was quicker. They fell to the floor, grappling in the red half-light. The commander's weapon skidded away across the smooth metal floor. Your device failed, Zarthul growled. The core is protected against such attacks. The core wasn't my target, Alan gasped as the commander's grip tightened around his throat. The power distribution was. Check your systems. Zarthul's upper eyes blinked in sequence. He activated his communication device. No response. He tried again. Nothing. What have you done? He demanded. Alan managed a smile despite the pressure on his throat. Cut off your command ship from the rest of your fleet. Temporarily, at least. But long enough for Earth to get ready for what's coming. The commander roared in anger and lifted Alan off the ground. I will end you myself. What happened next would become legend in both human and hegemony history. Commander Zarthul's grip was like iron around Alan's throat. The human could feel his vision beginning to darken, but even as his body weakened, his mind remained sharp. He noticed what the commander did not, a faint hissing sound from the cooling pipes above them. Alan stopped struggling. This confused Zarthul enough that his grip loosened slightly. Alan used that moment to glance meaningfully upward. "The coolant system," he gasped. "Listen." The commander's upper eyes looked up while his lower eyes remained fixed on Alan. The eye hissing had grown louder. A small crack had formed in one of the pipes, stressed by the power fluctuations. Coolant was leaking out, creating a fine mist in the air above them. "Your ship is wounded," Alan said. "Like me. But we can both still survive this." Zarthul hesitated. In that moment, with a sound like thunder, the damaged pipe burst. Pressurized coolant exploded outward. The force threw both Alan and the commander against the wall. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Core temperature critical. Coolant failure. In main chamber, emergency protocols activated. The room began to seal itself. Heavy metal doors started to close slowly. The ship's automatic systems were containing the damage. Alan and Zarthul both lay stunned on the floor. The human recovered first, years of training taking over. He got to his feet, unsteady but moving. He could escape now, find another way, to disable the ship while the commander was trapped. But then he saw it. A section of metal ceiling had fallen on Zarthul's leg, pinning him to the floor. The commander was struggling to free himself, his four eyes wide with the realization of what was happening. In minutes, the room would be sealed. The coolant was toxic. Without protection, neither of them would survive long. Alan stopped at the slowly closing door. Freedom was steps away. Earth needed him. Every logical part of his mind told him to leave the commander to his fate. He turned back. Zarthul watched, in disbelief as the human returned to his side. "What are you doing? Save yourself." Alan didn't answer. He braced himself against the fallen metal and pushed with all his strength. It barely moved. The commander added his strength, and together, they shifted it enough for Zarthul to pull free. The doors were almost closed now. They would never make it in time. "There," Alan pointed to a small maintenance hatch in the wall. "Emergency exit for technicians." They crawled through the narrow opening seconds before the main doors sealed completely. They emerged into a small antechamber with transparent walls. Through them, they could see the core room filling with coolant mist. Zarthul's leg was badly injured. Dark fluid that must have been his blood soaked his uniform. Alan tore a strip from his own clothing and wrapped it tightly around the wound. "Why?" the commander asked, his voice softer than Alan had ever heard it. "You could have escaped. Left me to die." Alan continued working on the leg. "That's not who we are. Not who I am." "Your actions make no sense," Zarthul insisted. "I am your enemy. I would have killed you. I still plan to conquer your world." Alan looked up at him. "Those facts didn't change. But you were trapped and needed help, so I helped." The commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. "In all our studies of your species, we never saw this. You value life even when logic says you should not." "It's not about logic," Alan said. "It's about who we choose to be, especially in the hardest moments." Beyond the antechamber, they could see emergency teams in protective gear entering the core room. Soon they would be found. "They will take you prisoner again," Zarthul said. Alan nodded. "I know. You had the perfect chance to escape. Some things are more important than escape." Alan sat back against the wall. His throat was bruised from the commander's grip, but he was otherwise unhurt. The next hours passed in a blur. Alan was taken back to detention, but to a different cell. This one had a proper bed and clean water. He slept, allowing his body to recover from the ordeal. He woke to find Commander Zarthul standing outside his cell. The commander's leg was healed. Their medical technology was clearly advanced. But something else had changed too. The way he stood, the look in his 4 eyes. "Our technicians have restored our communications," Zarthul said. "The fleet awaits my order to begin the attack on Earth." Alan stood up, facing the commander with dignity. "And will you give that order?" "I reviewed our research on humans again," Zarthul said. "We studied your physical weaknesses extensively. We calculated your technological disadvantages precisely. But we missed something fundamental." He pressed a control, and the force field disappeared. Alan tensed, ready for anything. "I am returning you to Earth," the commander said simply. Alan didn't move, suspecting a trick. "Why?" "Because I was wrong about your species." Zarthul's voice was solemn. "You are not what I thought. When faced with an enemy who had tried to kill you, who promised to destroy your world, you chose mercy. Such strength of character cannot be measured in our studies. One human doesn't represent all of us," Alan said carefully. "No. But one can. Change everything." The commander gestured for Alan to follow him. "I have ordered my fleet to stand down. I am going to recommend to the Hegemony Council that we open real diplomatic relations with Earth." They walked through corridors where alien crew members stopped and stared at the human who moved freely alongside their commander. "My superiors will not be pleased," Zarthul continued. "Our expansion plans will need to be reconsidered, but I cannot in good conscience order an attack on a species I have so deeply misunderstood." They reached a small shuttle bay. A craft was prepared for launch. "This will return you to Earth," the commander said. "I have transmitted a message to your leaders explaining the situation." Alan looked at him carefully. "How do I know this isn't a strategy? Send me back, let me give a false sense of security, then attack?" Zarthul reached into his uniform and removed a small device. He placed it in Alan's hand. "This records everything that happens on my ship. Take it to your leaders. It contains my report to the council recommending peace." Alan closed his fingers around the device. "Thank you." "No," the commander said. "Thank you, Major Alan Shepard. You have taught me that strength comes in many forms. The legends of human courage and compassion that I once mocked, I now understand they are not exaggerations." As Alan boarded the shuttle, Zarthul gave him a formal salute of respect. "Your world has produced at least one true hero. I suspect there are many more. The Hegemony would be wise to make friends of humans, not enemies." The shuttle doors closed. As the small craft pulled away from the massive flagship, Alan watched through the viewport as the Hegemony fleet began moving away from Earth orbit. He had come aboard prepared to die to save his planet. Instead, he had saved it by showing the best of what humanity could be. Sometimes, he realized, the strongest weapon isn't technology or physical power. Sometimes, it's the choice to remain human even in the darkest moments. The blue planet grew, larger in his viewport. Home. He had kept his promise after all.